Welcome to our channel, Psyverge. You're exhausted. Maybe you can't even explain why, but you feel it. It's like you've been carrying a silent burden for as long as you can remember. The constant pressure to keep everything in harmony, to make sure everyone is happy, to avoid conflict, smooth things over, always be kind, understanding, polite. Somewhere along the way, you were taught that being a good person was the ultimate goal, that if you were kind, people would treat you kindly, that the world honors fairness, honesty, humility, that goodness alone is enough. But what if that's not true? What if it never was? What if this idea, this comforting idea, was just a tool? A way to keep you obedient, predictable, easy to control? How many times have you stayed quiet to avoid upsetting someone? How often have you shrunk yourself just to be accepted? How many times have you smiled while being disrespected, told yourself it's okay, swallowed your pride, your anger, your truth, all in the name of being a good person? And yet you were ignored, overlooked, used. Here's the truth. The world does not reward kindness. It rewards strategy. And if you're watching this, chances are, you already know that on some level. You've played the nice guy, the understanding friend, the person who gives second chances, even when you're the one bleeding. And you've started to notice something terrifying. The more you try to be accepted, the less you are respected. The more you give, the more people demand. And the more they take, the less they value you. That's where Machiavelli enters the picture. Not as the monster he's often portrayed to be, but as a man who dared to speak an uncomfortable truth. That morality without power is a trap. That being perceived as good is not the same as being strong, effective, or respected. This video won't lie to you. It won't sugarcoat the truth. It's not about becoming heartless. It's about waking up. Waking up from the fantasy that the world is fair, that virtue is enough, that if you just try hard enough to be good, good things will follow. They won't. Not unless you learn the game you're playing. Because the moment you shape your life around the approval of others, you become a hostage to your own kindness. And if you're tired of being walked over, dismissed, or taken for granted, then maybe, just maybe, it's time to see things differently. To learn what no one taught you. To reclaim the power you gave away. To stop trying to be a good person, and start becoming a real one. Are you still convinced that the world values goodness? Take a look around. Who gets the admiration? Who rises to the top? Who earns respect, attention, influence? Is it the most generous, the most honest, the most selfless? Or is it the ones who are clear, strategic, and unafraid to draw a line? It's harsh, but it's real. The world doesn't run on kindness. It runs on usefulness. Machiavelli saw this clearly. He didn't write The Prince to encourage cruelty. He wrote it to expose how power actually works. And one of his most brutal lessons is this. Being good is never enough. In fact, it's often the fastest way to be discarded. You can give everything, your time, your loyalty, your support, expecting nothing in return. But the moment you stop being useful, the same people you helped will forget you, replace you, walk away without guilt or hesitation. Because your value was never in your morality. It was in your utility, in what you could provide, in what they could take. Have you noticed that the nice ones are always the ones justifying themselves? Always apologizing, explaining, begging to be understood. Meanwhile, those who set boundaries, who say no without guilt, they're the ones who get respect. They don't need to plead. Their presence is enough, because clarity looks like confidence, and blind kindness, that looks like weakness. People who never confront, never challenge, never push back, they aren't seen as equals. They're seen as tools, background noise, disposable. You can break yourself trying to be what others want, but if you don't represent strength, consequence, presence, no one will think twice about using you. Machiavelli once said that a leader should choose fear over love if he cannot have both. Why? Because fear protects you when love fades. Because people may love you today, but without respect, that love becomes entitlement. It becomes expectation. And the moment you stop pleasing them, they will turn. Respect comes from power, Not the power to dominate, but the power to act, to stand, to say enough. And this applies to you. If you keep living to be liked, you will keep being overlooked. Not because you're a bad person, but because people don't reward what fades into the background. So where does this deep need to be accepted come from? Why do you feel guilty saying no? Why does conflict make your skin crawl? Why does the thought of someone disliking you feel unbearable? Because you were conditioned. You weren't born a people pleaser. You were shaped into one. As a child, you were taught that being loved meant being agreeable. You were rewarded for politeness, punished for defiance. You learned early on that to be accepted, you had to edit yourself, hold your tongue, hide your needs, sacrifice your voice. Don't do that. It's rude. Be nice. Don't talk back. Always smile. So you adapted. You smiled when you were angry. You agreed when you wanted to scream. You forgave too quickly. You learned to survive by pleasing. But that survival tactic? It became your prison. And now you don't know who you are without it. You feel responsible for everyone's comfort, even if it drains you. You stay silent to avoid discomfort. You abandon yourself to maintain peace. But this isn't kindness. This is fear. The fear of being rejected, of not being enough, of being seen as selfish, of being seen at all. So you wear a mask. You call it empathy. You call it understanding. But it's fear. The fear of confrontation. The fear of abandonment. The fear of being real. And this fear is killing your power. You're not living. You're performing. But here's the good news. You can stop. You can reclaim the parts of you that you buried. The ones that say no. The ones that speak up. The ones that don't care if everyone claps. Because they're finally clapping for themselves. This is where Machiavelli meets Jung. Where outer strategy meets inner truth. Because real power starts when you stop being afraid of who you are. You don't need to be cruel. You don't need to be cold. But you do need to stop being invisible. You don't owe anyone your silence. You don't owe anyone your self-sacrifice. You owe yourself the truth. And when you stop trying to be a good person, you finally give yourself permission to be a whole one. You are wasting your time. Because respect is not given for intentions. It's given for presence, clarity, and power. That's what Machiavelli understood. And Carl Jung, though on a seemingly different path, saw the same truth from a deeper place. While Machiavelli mapped the world of strategy and influence, Jung explored the terrain of the self. What they both discovered was that suppression leads to suffering. Jung believed that every human being carries a shadow, a side of the personality we try to hide, repress, or deny. That includes your anger, your ambition, your capacity for selfishness, your desire to dominate, your ability to say no. But here's the key. Your shadow isn't evil. It's human. It holds the parts of you that you need to survive in a world that doesn't reward meekness. And the more you try to bury your shadow, to be the polite, sweet, understanding version of yourself, the more power it gains over you. You don't erase it. You just make it unconscious. And what is unconscious controls you. That's why people who always try to be good often explode in private. That's why they feel empty even after being praised. That's why their boundaries collapse. They've given their power away in the name of being liked. But the truth is, you don't need to be liked. You need to be respected. And respect starts with integration. Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." What does that mean in your life? It means that the version of you who knows how to say no, who sets standards, who doesn't flinch when someone tries to guilt-trip you, that version of you is not a monster. That's your shadow. And it's your ally, not your enemy. You were never meant to be only soft. You were meant to be whole. A complete human being is both compassionate and commanding, kind, but not naive, helpful, but not a servant, understanding, but never spineless. That is strength. That is maturity. That is the path both Machiavelli and Jung point to. Not a life lived in pretense, but in wholeness. Because here's the truth. If you keep showing up in the world only as the version others want, you will never be respected. And you will never be fulfilled. You will live in fragments. You will feel invisible in rooms where you give everything and receive nothing. And you will slowly lose yourself, Not in one grand moment, but in 1,000 quiet compromises. That's what being good without boundaries does to you. Machiavelli didn't say you should be ruthless for the sake of power. He said if you are to be effective, if you are to hold your space in this world, then you must accept the world as it is, not as you wish it to be. And what is the world? A place where people judge not by your intentions, but by your actions. Where most don't care how kind you are if you are always bending. Where you are forgotten the moment you become convenient. So stop trying to be a good person,